he has put sincere endeavor also, to bring us all together in this mission to satisfy Srila Prabhupada during a very, very special time. This is 125th birth anniversary of Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhuji was, he had a keen desire that we should read not just 13 to 18 chapters, we should cover up the entire Bhagavad Gita systematically. So he has engaged all of us in this wonderful service. And we are really thankful to you, Manish Prabhu. You have brought in, so many devotees together on this platform. And Prabhuji has also taken care of all the logistics. So I would like to thank Manish Prabhu by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Everybody, you can please chant for Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare
Rama, Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Hare.
Thank you. So now, we know Bhagavad Gita is not an ordinary book, it's a life manual. People say that we should read it when we grow old or something. That is such a misunderstanding, a misconception. After we have lived our life, without having the proper understanding about the life, how we should live it, we have lived it, and then we realize that we should have read it. Of course, it's better to read it anytime, but isn't it wise to read it while we are living, as soon as possible? From our childhood only, maybe we can introduce Bhagavad Gita to our kids, or we should also, start reading, not just reading, we have to study it, as Prabhupada says, scrutinizingly, very carefully, each and every word we have to understand, and not just study, we have to apply that in our knowledge, in our life. We attain that knowledge, we absorb that knowledge, and then we apply that knowledge in our lives. We have to transform our heart. And the next step is we try to help others also. Why, only we should benefit from Bhagavad Gita? Why not everybody? We have to develop that compassion, that mood which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu propagated, Jare dekho tare kaho Krishna Upadesha. Why? Because we all are, all living entities are children of Krishna. We all are brothers and sisters. So how can we display that brotherhood? By sharing this wisdom of Bhagavad Gita, so that through all the ups and downs of life, we all can, stick to the principles, the Vedic principles, and we can understand, the manual which Krishna has presented. When he created the material world, he also gave us the manual. It's not that, these people in the material world, now they create a product and they give us a manual, they are very intelligent. Who can be more intelligent than Krishna? He only started this process. He created something and he gave us the manual. So it's really, really important that we understand it and live our lives according to this and help everybody around us. So we, most of us, we will be having different motives of studying Bhagavad Gita. Like some of us would want to have a better understanding of Srila Prabhupada's purpose, and some of us want to, clear all our doubts and convince ourselves more and follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. It has been, a very important instruction of Srila Prabhupada to all of us that we should read his books, and we can have a deeper understanding, and we can come closer to Krishna. We can develop love for him. So there can be so many reasons, why we want to study Bhagavad Gita in a group like this. So yeah, first, we are really fortunate that we have got this platform by Prabhupada's mercy. So we need to, understand what is Prabhupada's, message to us. Why is it important for us to study his books? So I will just read some quotations of Srila Prabhupada in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila. He says that, all the devotees connected with ISKCON must read. It's not that they should read, must read all these scriptures. Otherwise, after some time, what will happen? They will simply eat, sleep, and fall down. So they can't stick to the goal, they have come for in this mission. We can't stick to it. So Prabhupada says they will miss the opportunity to attain an eternal, blissful life of transcendental, pleasure in the spiritual world. So Prabhupada has given us this opportunity, and we should make best use of it. we say, that we have not met Srila Prabhupada, he has not given us any instruction, or we feel that, for our current acharyas also, our Guru Maharaj also, that we have not received any direct instruction. If they would have directly told us, or if we would have met Srila Prabhupada, we could have, carried out our services in this mission even in a better way. But this is a direct instruction. But I just read, it's a direct instruction from Srila Prabhupada for all of us. And he says we must. So if we really want to please Srila Prabhupada, we should, understand his mood and study Bhagavad Gita with dedication, with determination, and with full enthusiasm. Prabhupada says that in this world, there are only two ways of living, material life or spiritual life. If we don't adopt spiritual life, material life is natural. If no this, then we'll go to that. And what is spiritual life? Just eating, sleeping, mating, defending, that's it. And what will happen? We'll waste this human form of like that. So let's not miss the opportunity. And, in this life itself, we should try to get out of this miserable material world and experience, the happiness of spiritual world. And Prabhupada also instructs us that when we read Bhagavad Gita, we should read it carefully, and we can find answers to all our questions in Bhagavad Gita. It's not an ordinary book. Krishna answers all our questions. He's not answering only Arjuna's questions, but he is answering everybody's. It's a universal message, and it's for all the times, not just 5,000 years ago it was applicable and now it's not. No, so it's applicable now and in future also it will be. So we should be completely convinced. And that this book, it is not different from Krishna. It has got all the potency to help us in all the ways. Materially also, free us from the miseries, help us in living our current life in a proper way, a meaningful life, not just living an animalistic life, and then finally achieving the goal of human form of life. So Prabhupada, he has given a very beautiful analogy how we should study the scriptures, how we should study books like Bhagavad Gita. We should be absorbed in the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita, of Srimad Bhagavatam. How, Prabhupada tells us that how, we boil the milk. We boil the milk, we simmer it for a long time. And what happens then? All the water evaporates. And what we get is the condensed milk, the very sweet and pure milk, which everybody likes. So Prabhupada says like that, when we absorb ourselves. Somebody is saying they can't see the screen. Okay, so what happens is when we absorb ourselves in the philosophy of these books, then all our anarthas, they evaporate. Like the water of the milk, all our anarthas, all our vices, our bad habits, bad qualities, they will evaporate. And we will become pure and sweet like condensed milk. And that will be an offering, a wonderful offering to Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, and our Guru Maharaj. Right? So we have to make our heart like that condensed milk, very pure and sweet, so that our Guru, Srila Prabhupada, and Krishna, they like this offering. And for quality devotional service also. Now we know that, we should serve Krishna. We, everybody here are connected to ISKCON now, and we understand that there are different ways of serving Krishna. We have to practice devotional service. But to practice quality devotional service also, we need training. And how do we get that training? By getting the knowledge of Krishna from these books. Otherwise what happens is, it will become mundane affair for us. After some time, we will start losing interest in it. We will lose our consciousness, we will lose our goal, and there will not be, any difference between materialistic work and the spiritual work. So we have to regularly read and hear these books, and then we can serve properly with proper consciousness. Right? Otherwise, after some time, this devotional service also may become like a burden. It's called Ugra Karma. That we are forced to do something. I don't know how to in long run. Then we lose interest in this now. In material world, what happens is whenever we do some activity, we expect something, some return. Right? We are motivated by some result. Like, I work throughout the month for office, so I expect a paycheck at the end. But what do we expect in devotional service? What will keep us motivated in our devotional practices? We need to understand that. And what is that? What is that motivation? It is to please Krishna. It is to please Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. So if we have this knowledge and if we do it with the right mood, then we can practice for long and ever increasing enthusiasm and determination, purifying our heart, transforming our lives. Our aim is not to just become an, Prabhupada says, an armchair scholar. I have read Bhagavad Gita, I know so many shlokas and all that. That's not our aim. Our aim is to transform our heart, to develop good character. Prabhupada always, said that ISKCON devotees, how this Tilak, Kanthimala, everything has a significance. People don't see, how much a person knows, but they see, how a person behaves. A person is known by how he, by his talks, whether he's walking his talk or not. Just by preaching it and just saying it out and not living by that will not have an effective impact upon the people around us whom we want to preach. So we have to walk our talk. That is our aim. We want to transform our heart. We want to develop true love for Krishna. And how can we attain that? By pleasing Srila Prabhupada. Right? So, there are 3 steps of, learning anything. First is Shravanam, that we hear. And hearing is also not just ordinary hearing. We have to be very attentive, very sincere, just one-pointed focus. It's not that, somebody else is reading, so it's not my turn to read or something, and it's okay if I ignore or do something else, check my mobile side by side. No, that will not help us. So very attentive hearing and from bona fide sources, not from anybody. Now, what we are going to hear and read, it's the most bona fide source, Bhagavad Gita as it is. Prabhupada has presented it as it is. So it's very bona fide and it's definitely going to help us. We see the effect of this Bhagavad Gita as it is, how Prabhupada has transformed people all around the world. The taste of the pudding is in eating it. Some people, when we distribute books, they ask us how Bhagavad Gita as it is different from other Bhagavad Gita. We have so many editions of Bhagavad Gita. Why your book is special? So what do we tell them? The taste of the pudding is in eating it. Just see what is the result. By reading this book, Bhagavad Gita as it is, how many people have been transformed, how their hearts are purified, and how understanding the true, relationship with Krishna, the true nature of the living entity, the true nature of the God, people have made their life successful. So we have to hear attentively from bona fide sources. Second step is manana. Manana is like meditation. We have to reflect. It's not that, 8 o'clock, class over, close it, and that's it, forget about it. No, we have to meditate upon it. Today, what was the key point? What struck me the most? What can I apply? And, step by step, I can make my life better. So we have to see that, and we can discuss what we have heard or read with our family members, with our friends, with our relatives, because by sharing, by discussing, that point will become even stronger in our mind, in our consciousness. And then the third step is Nidhi Dhyasana. Nidhi Dhyasana is practicing, realizing. So having, realized that knowledge, we start living according to that. That is Nidhi Dhyasana. So the realization comes and we start, practicing it, and we see how it helps us. So we have to study Bhagavad Gita now with the right mood. And there's one more, good point which I like from Prabhupada's messages was, foundation. That we all, we are, first of all, we want to help ourselves, and you all are so compassionate. I know you want to preach, you want to pass this. So, so to make our preaching effective, Krishna, can everybody please go on mute? Thank you. So to make our preaching effective, we need to have proper knowledge, right? Otherwise, our preaching, it will be just, sentimental, or it will be based upon mental concoctions. One time I'm feeling like this, other day I'm feeling like this. So I will just, keep telling whatever my mind is pushing me to. So it will not be very effective, and it's not according to our parampara. So definitely it's not going to help us or anybody else. So it should not be sentimental. It should not be a mental concoction, because mind is conditioned. If we just depend upon our mind, what happens? It is conditioned. It will accept what it likes, whatever is conducive for sense gratification, and it will reject anything else. And that's of no use for us, So if devotional life, we have to make it very, fruitive. We have to have the proper knowledge. We have to have a strong foundation, because there will be problems, there will be challenges while we are, we say that we have taken shelter of Krishna now my life will be misery-free or something. Problems will be there, but the difference is now how we handle those problems. We will be taking shelter of Krishna, not of, the wine or TV or movies or anything. No, we don't take shelter of all that. So our approach changes. Whose shelter we take, that changes. We have to make our foundation very strong. Problems, challenges will always be there, but we have to be steady. And how can we be steady? If we have proper knowledge. How we see, any structure, any tall building, what's the most important part of that building is foundation. It's not seen, it's not glorified, but the building is standing tall because of only that foundation. The building is able to stand the storms, the cyclones, the hurricanes, whatever, because of the foundation. So similarly, to handle the storms which will come in our lives, more or less in everybody's life, storms will be there. They are inevitable in this material world. That's the nature of the material world. So how we will be able to sustain that, how we will be able to go through that successfully, that depends upon how strong foundation of philosophical understanding we have. And the sentiments, they may change. Our mind will be one time here, other time there. But we have to understand that our philosophical understanding should be very, very strong. Okay, so to rise above this and all that, we need to have a strong intelligence based upon philosophy presented by Srila Prabhupada. And next thing is, as I mentioned, we have to apply it. We don't have to just become bookworms or any scholars, apply it in our lives. And we have to preach by example, not just by words, by example. Yeah, step by step. It's not that, overnight we will become wonderful, all bad qualities. It's our endeavor, our sincerity that matters. So Prabhupada, he will be pleased by our sincere endeavors. And then if our Guru is pleased, Krishna will be pleased. And he will show the mercy and knowledge will be revealed to us. What is in our hand is we have to follow our Guru's instruction sincerely, very enthusiastically, with full determination. It's not that, I attended class this week, next week I miss it, then again, I may attend, I may not. It's not going to work like that. We have to prove to Krishna, we have to prove to Srila Prabhupada how dedicated we are, how determined we are. So then only the knowledge will be revealed to us. They will be pleased. We can't force them to give us knowledge, to shower their mercy upon us. We can just practice, sincerely with determination. And I also heard in one lecture, that our ISKCON centers, they are embassies of spiritual world. How embassies, they represent the culture of that particular country. ISKCON is representing the culture of the spiritual world. And who is the ambassador of this embassy? It's Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada only is going to give us visa to go to spiritual world. So it's very, very important to please him, to satisfy him, to seek his blessings, to seek his mercy. So, that's all I would want to say. I hope, we all together inspire each other, encourage each other, and be regular. Of course, when it's unavoidable, we may miss the class, but I think Prabhuji is recording, somebody is recording. So they may be sharing the recording also. So we all should, try to encourage and be on the same page and study it regularly. We have to develop that habit of reading it regularly. It's not, that, okay, one time done and that's it. We have to study it again and again. It's not that one time you will understand, all the messages. Every time Bhagavad Gita will reveal a new message to us, right? So now I'll just say the Mangalachara and then we will start reading Bhagavad Gita. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshushanamilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'm not covering up the introduction. If you people are interested, I mean, of course we should. And let me tell you, it's a very interesting thing how Prabhupada recorded this introduction. He, with so much enthusiasm, if you listen to the audio of introduction, there's so much enthusiasm. Prabhupada is preaching as if, can you guess how many people were there in the hall? Was it full house? 100, 200? No, nobody, zero. No one was present in the hall, but he was preaching, he was dictating it in the dictaphone with so much enthusiasm, because it was carrying Prabhupada that we can also carry forward. So it's a very long, very detailed, very beautiful introduction. So you all can go through it. Towards the end of it, we see, Gita Mahatmya also. So I'll just read one Mahatmya. This Gita Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, the essence of all the Upanishads, is just like a cow. And Lord Krishna, who is famous as a cowherd boy, is milking this cow. Arjuna is just like a calf, and learned scholars and pure devotees are to drink the nectarian milk of Bhagavad Gita. So this Bhagavad Gita, it is essence of all the Upanishads, right? And what does it say? Arjuna is the calf. It's the essence. What is the essence of cow milk? So essence of all the Upanishads is Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is compared to the milk, and Krishna is the cowherd boy who is going to milk the cow, taking out the essence from all the Vedas. But to milk the cow, what is needed? A calf is also needed, right? Cowherd boy is needed and a calf is needed. Without the calf, the cow will not give the milk. So similarly, the knowledge is revealed only in the presence of pure devotee like Arjuna. Calf is Arjuna. So we can actually understand Bhagavad Gita in the presence of pure devotees. So it's a wonderful, effort by Manish Prabhu, who has brought all of us together in a group. We all can read together, in association of devotees. When Bhagavad Gita can reveal the message to us. Without devotee association, it's really hard. On our own, it becomes very difficult to understand Bhagavad Gita. So we should appreciate that again and again, how fortunate we are, we are getting this opportunity to study Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so just to give you, you all already know, but just to summarize what Bhagavad Gita, as we all know, there are 18 chapters in Bhagavad Gita. The first, and it's divided into 3 groups of 6 chapters each. The first 6 chapters, they are known by the name Karam Yoga. And the middle one are Bhakti Yoga, and the last one are Jnana Yoga. So why so? It's not that, in the first 6 chapters, we are talking only about karma. Jnana and Bhakti are also touched, but there is predominance of karma. Like how, by performing Nishkam Karam Yoga, which contains knowledge within it, we can accomplish our purpose. And in the end, again, so many subject matters which Krishna had talked about earlier, he's going to talk about that in detail, so to give us more knowledge. And in the middle 6 chapters, that is the Bhakti Yoga, that is very, very important. It's superior to both Karam and Jnana Yoga. That's why it's kept in the middle. Why is it kept in the middle? The reason given by our acharyas is because it is very special. It's superior. Without a touch of Bhagavad Gita, Karam Yoga and Jnana Yoga, both are useless, they say. And if Bhagavad Gita was kept in beginning or at the end, it would be touching only one of them. So, just to make it possible that Bhakti Yoga touches both of them, it's kept in the middle, because it gives life to both Karam Yoga and Gyan Yoga. Without a tinge, without a touch of Bhakti Yoga, Karam Yoga and Gyan Yoga are of no use. And the second reason, this was the first reason, and second reason is that, it's to protect it, like how we protect a precious jewel, like a diamond. It's kept in a case. We have a covering at the bottom and a lid on the top, and the diamond, the precious thing, is kept in the middle. Like that, Bhagavad Gita is kept in the middle to protect it. Protect from whom? Protect from unscrupulous commentators. Protect from, non-bona fide commentators. We have seen, so many commentators, they have given so much, wrong information, wrong commentaries upon Karam Yoga, because that is just the beginning. So they just, first of all, touch that only. If Bhakti Yoga was there, they would have created a big blunder. So it is kept safe in the middle. They can touch only Karam Yoga, and it is safe in the middle to protect it from non-bona fide commentators or unscrupulous commentaries. Okay. So now the system which we are going to follow is, it's a big group, but those who are interested to read, they can raise their hands, because it's a reading group. We have to, take part from both the sides. I'll be just sharing, some insights, some realizations, and the detailed explanation by Prabhupada upon that purport, just discussing the purport and some additional things which I've heard from my seniors and from the lectures of Srila Prabhupada. But devotees, all of you have to take part in reading, right? So one verse, we will, I'll say it. I know I'm not good at Sanskrit, so please pardon me if I pronounce it wrong. I'm just not good at it. So I'll just say the shloka, and then one of you can read the translation. And then we will see if it's long purport, maybe one paragraph at a time, one devotee can read it, and we can switch on to the next devotee then. So Manish Prabhu, may I request you to please call out the names, whoever is raising their hands, they can then I'll switch off my video now. We should have a full screen of now this shlokas and the purport Bhagavad Gita on the screen. And I request all of you to keep a copy of Bhagavad Gita as it is also ready with you. And a pencil, notebook, pen, whatever, to note down the key points so that you can meditate upon that. You can discuss it with your family members, and we can realize and apply that. Okay. So chapter 1, observing the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. First verse is spoken by Dhritarashtra. This is the only verse spoken by Dhritarashtra. But we should also understand, let me mention that, or maybe later on I can say, we should not think that, why are we reading something told by Dhritarashtra or by Duryodhan, and why are we, remembering all these people? We should read only Krishna Uvacha verses or Arjuna Uvacha verses. Why are we saying so many demons? Because in the first chapter, when we are, Prabhupada is talking about observing the armies, we will say the names of Kauravas also, the people who are on the irreligious side. So, but we should understand, they are also playing a role in they are facilitating Krishna to give his message to everybody. So, and whenever Krishna is there, everything becomes transcendental. So they have sambandh with Krishna, So that's why we should not neglect their names. Each and every name in Bhagavad Gita is equally important, because they have Nirbandh Krishna Sambandh. They have established a connection with Krishna. It's not World War I or World War II warriors that we are talking about, but we are talking about Kurukshetra battle warriors. And because Krishna was present there, it's very special. Each and everybody present there is very, very special. It was Krishna's mission. He wanted to gather all the demonic power in the battlefield and kill them. So everything is according to his plan. So don't just feel it's Dhritarashtra Uvacha, so we can be careless. We should be focused. Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharam Kshetre Kurukshetre Samveta Yutsavaha Mamakaha Pandavascheva Kim Kurvata Sanjaya.
Samyukta Mataji, can you read the translation?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the palace of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? Puppet. Bhagavad Gita is the widely read theistic science summarized in Gita Mahatmya, glorification of the Gita. There it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. This example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself. In the way the teaching is understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand the Bhagavad Gita in that line of disciplic succession without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Gita. It is the perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna.
Yep. Thank you, Mataji. Can I ask the devotee with name Mitra can read the other paragraph?
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, I can read. The topics discussed by the Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya, as described in the Mahabharata, form the basic principle for this great philosophy. It is understood that this philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage from the immemorial time of the Vedic age. It was spoken by the Lord when he was present personally on this planet for the guidance of mankind. The word Dharmkshetra, a place where religious rituals are performed, is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjaya, what did they do? He was confident that both his sons and the sons of his younger brother Pandu were assembled in that field of Kurukshetra for a determined engagement of the war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want a compromise between the cousins and brothers, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield. Because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kurukshetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship, even for the denizens of heaven, Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of the holy place on the outcome of the battle. He knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandu favorably because by nature they were all virtuous. Sanjaya was a student of Vyasa, and therefore, by the mercy of Vyasa, Sanjaya was able to envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra even while he was in the room of Dhritarashtra. And so Dhritarashtra asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belong to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field, the unnecessary plants are taken out, so it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kurukshetra, where the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, the unwanted plants like Dhritarashtra's son, Duryodhana, and others would be wiped out, and the thoroughly religious persons, headed by Yudhishthira, would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of the words Dharma Kshetre and Kurukshetre apart from their historical and Vedic importance. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So here in this verse, the first words only, Dharam Kshetre, Kurukshetre. This is very important, as we just saw in the purport. Prabhupada has given detailed explanation. We will talk about that. But what is going on here? Here, Dhritarashtra and he is sitting at Hastinapur in his room with Sanjaya. So he is inquiring from Sanjaya to give him live telecast of what is going on there at the battlefield. How could Sanjaya do that? Because Sanjaya, he was a disciple of Vyasdev, and by his guru's mercy, he could envision in his heart, whatever he wanted. So he could see what's happening on the battlefield. And what is he asking? What is his question? Kim akurata Sanjaya? What did they do? So why this question? By itself, this question has no meaning. What will two armies do on the battlefield? Will they have a grand festival or a feast or something? But natural, they will fight. No? So we really think about it. Why Dhritarashtra is asking this question? So our acharyas, they help us, understand. They reveal the inner meaning of this question of Dhritarashtra. They tell us that Dhritarashtra, he was afraid of the influence of the holy place. Dharam Kshetre. Kurukshetra is not an ordinary place. It's a Dharam Kshetra. And Dhritarashtra, he was afraid of the influence of this holy place on the consciousness of his sons as well as the consciousness of the Pandavas. His first fear was that, what if this place, it affects my sons, and they just give up the idea of fighting and they try to settle down everything peacefully. So then they will not be able to become the king. And the other side, Pandavas, that was for the Kauravas. His fear was that because he was pretty sure that his sons will win. Why? Because Bhishma was on their side. So he was like, if either of the party withdraw from the fight because of this effect of the holy place, that will not be good for his sons. They may not get the kingdom. Duryodhan may not become the king. So that's the inner significance of this question. And the Pandavas on the other side, definitely, they are religious people. So they would also think that, why to fight for just a kingdom? Leave it and just go to some forest. So he didn't want that to happen. So that is thing. And Srila Prabhupada has, many times, told us, the significance of a place on the outcome of the activity, because it affects our consciousness. The same activity, when it is done with a different consciousness, it gives us a different result. And the consciousness is affected by the place. So the place have a very important influence upon our consciousness. Prabhupada says that, places like brothels, slaughterhouses, this liquor houses and all they are in tamoguna, and cities are in rajoguna. Forest is in goodness. And Krishna temples, Vishnu temples, they are in pure goodness. That's why, when we go to temple, naturally we feel so blissful. We feel like doing some seva. At home, maybe we are fatigued or we are, this paining, that paining, but in temple, we forget about all that. So that place, it really affects our consciousness. And this Kurukshetra, it's not an ordinary place. It's a place for sacrifice to the devtas, it's a place of worship even for the denizens of heaven. It's a very special place. So from this, we understand, that this is Dharam Kshetre, and Bhakti Vinod Baldev Vidyabhushan's commentary. Yeah, I just checked his commentary. So Baldev Vidyabhushan, he says that under its influence, Dhritarashtra is feeling that, will my sons give up their animosity and they will give up the kingdom to the Pandavas? Or will perhaps the Pandavas, who are always following dharma, they will consider at this place that it's best to go to the forest and not commit adharma in the form of destroying the family tradition by fighting? Then both the sides would get some intelligence because of the influence of this place. And they will see that there's no good in fighting, killing our relatives and friends, and they would negotiate. So externally, he is, he is just, trying to show to Sanjaya that he's concerned about the battle. He doesn't want the battle to happen. But internally, our acharyas help us, to understand the inner meaning, that he was depressed. He was, trying to understand, he was trying to make sure that the battle happens. So there's a double meaning, hypocrisy of Dhritarashtra, which we understand from here. Externally, he's just trying to show what is happening. I hope the battle is not going to take place. But internally, this is his fear, that it should take place. None of them should give up. In the first paragraph of the purport, Prabhupada is trying to, tell us that how fortunate, we are that we are able to understand Bhagavad Gita in the same line of disciplic succession as Arjuna got to hear it. He directly from Krishna, Arjuna got it, and the same message is passed on us as it is. Like how a ripe mango, which is growing on the tree, it's just not thrown here or there. It's handed on to, the next person. Next, there's a chain of people. So the mango, it reaches us all safe, sweet, ripe mango in our hands. So that's what this Bhagavad Gita is. If it is thrown from the top, it will just tear apart. Or if it goes in wrong hand, they may take a bite and then give it. So no contamination in the mango which we have received. We have got it by the chain of disciplic succession. So we are very fortunate. And then when we see in the third paragraph, the word dharam kshetre. So again, Prabhupada has given an analogy here. So Krishna is like the transcendental farmer. Kshetra means field. And who works on the field? A farmer. So Prabhupada is telling that Krishna is like the transcendental farmer, not an ordinary farmer. He is going to uproot all the weeds in the form of Duryodhan and his army. A farmer, he has to, to have a healthy growth of the crop. He has to keep plucking up the weeds from his paddy field. And that's what Krishna is going to do. Krishna is going to wipe out all the weeds. This is the field of cultivation where Krishna would help. He would assist Yudhishthira to establish the grains of dharma, to grow the grains of dharma and destroy the weeds like Duryodhan for the healthy growth of the crop. So that's the significance of dharam kshetre and the analogy we understand from it. And then the words here in the second line of the verse, if you say mamakaha pandavas chair. So what does that mean? Mamka is my sons. And for Pandavas, he's saying Pandavas, but actually they were also Kauravas. Why is he calling them Pandavas? This reveals Dhritarashtra's mentality. His mentality is displayed here. How he's separating Pandavas from the Kaurava dynasty. They were also from the same dynasty. They all were Kauravas. But he is, like these sons are mine. They are from Kaurava dynasty. They are Kauravas and they are sons of Pandavas. Why is it? Because of his attachment to his sons. All because of material attachment. So we should be very careful. We should take this message from Dhritarashtra here now. Because of the material attachment, we may face great impediment in our lives on the progressive path. And it's a source of misery. We know the outcome, what happened because of his attachment to Duryodhan. He is a king. He should have, the same feeling for everybody. But he is giving preference to his own sons. He's not playing a good role as a king, like Yudhishthira Maharaj played later on. So many other kings had done. Dhritarashtra is not being a good king. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he gives an example of a marriage party. It's very common. So one marriage party, they had to go on the other side of the river for the wedding, from one side, they had to go on the other side, to the girl's side, maybe to the bride's side for the wedding. So it was night time. It had got dark when they got in the boat, and whole night they were rowing the boat. And when it was morning, what did they find? They were at the same place. Why? How did it happen? Because the anchor was not removed. What is anchor? The rope by which the boat is tied to a pole on the shore of the river, so that the boat, it just doesn't get carried away in the water because of wind or something. So it is tied. So that is anchor. So the same thing, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is trying to explain to us that, if we don't remove the anchor of material attachments, the rope which is tying us to the material attachments, me and mine, like Dhritarashtra is having, from those attachments, then what will happen? The material contamination, it will prevent us from proceeding ahead in devotional service and crossing the ocean of material existence. Like how they could not cross the river, we can't cross this ocean of material existence. So these are some important points which Prabhupada has explained beautifully in the purport here, and we need to carry it in our mood. Next verse. Prabhuji, you can display the second verse. Yeah. Text 2. Sanjaya uvacha drishtva tu pandavanekam yuyudham duryodhanastada acharyam upasangamya raja vachanam abravit.
Shubha Mataji, can you read the translation?
Hello. Hare
Yeah,
Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, we can hear
Sanjay,
you.
yeah. So I'm reading the translation. Sanjay Uvacha, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and spoke the following words. Purport. 1 minute. Yeah. Dhritarashtra was blind from birth. Unfortunately, he was also bereft of spiritual vision. He knew very well that his sons were equally blind in the matter of religion, and he was sure that they could never reach an understanding with the Pandavas, who were all pious since birth. Still, he was doubtful about the influence of the place of pilgrimage, and Sanjaya could understand this motive in asking about the situation on the battlefield. Sanjaya wanted, therefore, to encourage the despondent king and thus assured him that his sons were not going to make any sort of compromise under the influence of the holy place. Sanjaya therefore informed the king that his son Duryodhana, after seeing the military force of the Pandavas, at once went to the commander-in-chief Dronacharya to inform him of the real position. Although Duryodhana is mentioned as the king, he still had to go to the commander on account of the seriousness of the situation. He was therefore quite fit to be a politician, but Duryodhana's diplomatic veneer could not disguise the fear he felt when he saw the military arrangement of the Pandavas.
Thank you, Mataji. So here now Sanjay has started narrating what he can see on the screen. So how Prabhupada has very nicely started the purport. Dhritarashtra was blind from birth, not just, by his eyes, but also spiritually. Spiritually also he was blind. And same thing was true for his sons also. How were they blind? In the matter of religion. They could never reach an understanding with the Pandavas. Pandavas, they were all pious. So they had spiritual vision, but Kauravas, Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra, they didn't have any spiritual vision. And here another important thing is Sanjay is calling Duryodhana king. He's not a king as of now, but just to, pacify, like Prabhupada is telling, to pacify his master, Dhritarashtra. He could understand that Dhritarashtra is, he is uncomfortable, what is going to happen, and is inquiring all this. To settle him down, he's calling him King Duryodhana, that don't worry, battle is going to take place and your son has chances to become a king. So he's calling him king here. And Prabhupada is telling how Dhritarashtra is blind, not just from eyes, but spiritually also. So now there's not much to talk about in this verse. We'll move to the third one. So we will, from third verse to 11th verse. Now we have the verses which tell us about Duryodhana's diplomacy. Towards the end of the second verse, but we saw that he was quite fit to be a politician. He was very diplomatic. So what shows that he was very diplomatic? We will understand that from verses 3 to 11. Verse number 3. Pashyatam Pandu Putranam Acharya Mahatim Chamun Vayudham Drupada Putrena Tava Shishena Dhimata.
Rama Mataji, can you read translation?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. Purport. Duryodhana, a great diplomat, wanted to point out the defects of Dronacharya, the great Brahmana commander-in-chief. Dronacharya had some political quarrel with King Drupada, the father of Draupadi, who was Arjuna's wife. As a result of this quarrel, Drupada performed a great sacrifice by which he received the benediction of having a son who would be able to kill Dronacharya. Dronacharya knew this perfectly well, and yet, as a liberal Brahmana, he did not hesitate to impart all his military secrets when the son of Drupada, Drishtadyumna, was entrusted to him for military education. Now, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Drishtadyumna took the side of the Pandavas, and it was he who arranged for their military phalanx. After having learned the art from Dronacharya, Duryodhana pointed out this mistake of Dronacharya's so he might be alert and uncompromising in the fighting. By this, he wanted to point out also that he should not be similarly lenient in the battle against the Pandavas, who were also Dronacharya's affectionate students. Arjuna especially was his most affectionate and brilliant student. Duryodhana also warned that such leniency in the fight would lead to a defeat. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So here, we will start understanding Duryodhana's diplomacy. So first of all, if you see the words, Drupad Putrena, what significance does this have in the verse? So Drupad and Dronacharya, they were friends, I'll just quickly in 2 lines, I'll just tell. So they were friends when they were young, but Drupad was rich and Dronacharya was a poor Brahmana. But they were very close, and Drupada told him that he would be ready to help him anytime in life ahead, so he could approach him. So one time Drona, he needed help, and he went to Drupad and asked for a cow, so that he could milk the cow. But Drona, he refused. Drupada refused. And Dronacharya, then he got angry and he decided to take revenge. So he fought a fight with Drupada and he defeated him. Dronacharya defeated Drupada, but left him alive. And then Drupada, he just, took a pledge that, I have to kill Dronacharya. He has insulted me, in a very grave way, and I need to just kill him. And for that, he performed sacrifice, and he asked for a son who could kill him. And that his son was Drishtadyumna. Along with Drishtadyumna, he was also blessed with a daughter, Draupadi. So that boy, he was to kill Drona. So Dronacharya, he knew this, that this is the son of Drupada and he is going to kill me. But when this Drishtadyumna, Drupad Putrena, when the son of Drupad, he approached Dronacharya for military training, he accepted him as his disciple. Even though he knew he wants to kill him, he still, he gave him all the military training. So that's why Duryodhana is now pointing out. He's not saying Drishtadyumna, just see Drishtadyumna, how beautiful he has done here. But he's saying Drupad Putrena, to remind him of his animosity with Drupad, that what you had done. You had created a blunder that time. You gave him training and now he's using that training against you. So he's indirectly telling him that, you have committed one mistake by training him. Now you don't commit second mistake. What is the second mistake he's afraid of? Don't commit second mistake by showing any partiality to Pandavas. So this is his diplomacy, that he's conveying this message indirectly to his teacher, Dronacharya. He didn't want to upset his teacher. And he's also his commander-in-chief now. So he didn't want to upset him and disturb him now at the time of battle. So indirectly he's conveying that be strong, in your mission to fight against them. Don't be partial. So in Srila Prabhupada, he just tells us that why did Dronacharya do this? He knew that this boy is going to kill me, then still he accepted him as his disciple, and he was the best teacher. So naturally he approached him and he gave him all the knowledge. Why did he do that? Because Dronacharya was a Brahmana. He was in Sattva Guna, mode of goodness. That's the nature of a Brahmana. People in mode of goodness, they are liberal. He just performed his duty. He didn't worry about, the result. This is my duty. Somebody's approaching me. I have to do my job. So without worrying about the result. And Dronacharya, Duryodhana, he's thinking that, having a strong army, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, that if the army is great, they can win, or if my army is great, I will win. So Srila Prabhupada tells them, he didn't know, Duryodhana didn't know that death doesn't depend upon military strength or bodily strength or, your intellectual strength or anything. When death appears, nobody can check it. Nobody has any control on it. It's Krishna's desire that works. Krishna mare rakhe ke, Krishna rakhe mare ke. No, Srila Prabhupada also gives the example of goats in the slaughterhouse. Even after seeing, that this goat is gone for getting butchered, the second goat, it's busy eating the grass, doesn't realize that I can be the next one. That's the case with us also. Yudhishthira Maharaj also tells the Yaksha, that what is the greatest wonder in the world, that every day people are going to the abode of Yamaraj, but still one thinks that I will remain here forever. This is a great foolishness. This is the greatest wonder. That's what Yudhishthira Maharaj said. So Duryodhana is just trying to tell, that on the strength of army, somebody may win or lose. So we need to understand it doesn't work like that. And he's instigating his teacher in an indirect way to be strongly against the Pandavas, not be lenient with them. Okay, so next verse again, we will see his diplomacy. What is it here now? Atra Shura Maheshwasha Bhima Arjuna Samayudhi Yudhana Viratascha Drupadascha Maharatha.
Shubha Mataji, can you read the translation and the purport?
Hare Krishna. Here is my army, many heroic bowmen, equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna, great fighters like Yuyudhana, Virata, and Drupada. Even though Drishtadyumna was not a very important obstacle in the face of the Dronacharya's very great power in the military art, there were many others who were causes of fear. They are mentioned by Duryodhana as great stumbling blocks on the path of victory, because each and every one of them was as formidable as Bhima and Arjuna. He knew the strength of Bhima and Arjuna, and thus he compared the others with them. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. So here now we see that, first of all, what is Duryodhana doing? He's judging his enemy's strength. That's his intelligence. Now, Prabhupada tells us that's what one should do so that one can prepare accordingly. So he's gauging, estimating the strength of the enemy. In our spiritual practice also, it's not just materially, only when we are in battlefield, we have an enemy. We have this enemy around us all the time. What is it? In the form of Maya, in the form of our own mind. Maya is doing her service, posing different problems, and it is very, very powerful. You should not ignore, how strong Maya is. You should not ignore it just like that. That's why Prabhupada said that, my only complaint, once he was asked that, are you satisfied with your disciples, or, what is your concern? So Prabhupada said that my only complaint is that my disciples are not sufficiently afraid of Maya. Once we become sufficiently afraid of Maya, then we can be very determined. We can be very steady in our devotional practice. So therefore, it's very important that we know the strength of Maya and we understand that she is a formidable enemy. And that's why we have to be very, very careful. We have to be very alert in the practice of our devotional service. And here Duryodhana is pointing out that there are many heroes equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna. So Bhima and Arjuna, they are most powerful. But he's saying that there are others also who are equal to them. So it's a good team. He's taking an estimate of his enemy's team, that it's overall also a very good team. So it's an important message for us, Duryodhana is teaching us. See, that's why I said nothing we should ignore in Bhagavad Gita. What can Duryodhana teach us? Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, everybody is giving us important lessons. We should not ignore our enemy. Whenever we do something, we have to take into consideration the risk factors also. This Prabhupada's instruction is applicable in our material life also. Whatever work we do, of course, when we become devotees, whatever duties we are doing, materially, they are also in service of Krishna, but we should consider the risk factors. We should consider the challenges. In spiritual life, material life, we will face challenges. And if we underestimate them or ignore them, then we will not be alert enough, we will not be prepared enough, and we will not be successful. So this is an important lesson shared by Prabhupada from Duryodhana. Okay, moving on to what's the time? It's 8:06. Should we stop here? I didn't notice the time, I'm sorry. Fifth one is just translation. Maybe we can do the fifth one and we can stop there. We can start from sixth one next time. Yeah. What's number 5? Drishtashketus Chekitanaha Kashirajascha Virayavan Urujit Kunti Bhojascha Shabyascha Narapungavaha.
Mataji, can you read it?
Yes, Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. There are also great heroic, powerful fighters like the Drishtaketu and Chekitana and Kasiraja Purujit, Kunti Bhoja and Saibya. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, so that's just a translation. He's just naming the other people on the other side. Okay, so from the next verse, he will, again give more description of the enemy's party. So we'll do that next week. Thank you all. And again, I request that please keep inspiring, keep encouraging each other, and be determined and try to attend the classes as regularly as possible. So, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.